Wendy Spencer, welcome to the great state of Maine. It's delightful to have you here. You're a pretty important person to have here in the state, and what I'd like you to talk a little bit about is generally the whole theme of volunteerism and service learning. Why should I care?
Thanks, Meredith. I'm really happy to be here in Maine. I love Maine. I've vacationed here all my life a lot, so it's great to be back, and it's such a beautiful state. We have some great news here in Maine, and that volunteerism is alive and well. National Service, AmeriCorps, Senior Corps programs are doing fantastic. Our last research showed us that 345,000 Mainers served 579,000 hours for a value, and we actually value service hours. The independent sector puts a price tag on the value of one's time, and that value for Maine comes to $1 billion in value.
Wow.
Now, the reason that that's important is that that tells us that Mainers are connected to their communities, and new research just released a couple of weeks ago from the National Conference on Citizenship in collaboration with Circle, the Knight Foundation, and Civic Enterprises tells us that communities that have a higher civic health, that have tighter social cohesion, a high density of nonprofits, and I want to talk about that civic health, but these three factors will actually recover from the recession or difficult economic times faster than other communities who do not. Now, what that means by civic health is, according to the report, is communities that have a high rate of volunteerism, that have a high rate of registered voters and voting, that have people who attend public meetings more often than others, and people who are working with neighbors to solve local problems. So all of those factors connect people to the very core fabric of needs in a community. When you have that occurring in a community, the unemployment rate is actually lower than communities that don't have those factors. So Maine has a lot of volunteering going on, seniors who are volunteering, young people who are getting into the volunteer. You have neighbors helping each other, crossing county lines, working from more of the urban areas or the coastal areas into rural areas. So this will lead, and probably already is, into getting out of the recession better. Now, why is that? Because people who are connected to their community buy local instead of far away. Investors who are connected to the community may say, I'm going to invest my new idea or my entrepreneurship here instead of far away.
And I think you're right. I mean, farmers markets are a great example because there is a movement afoot in Maine to buy local, and I think there's an organization in Maine that says if every family spent $10 of their weekly food bill buying local produce, that we would really change the landscape in Maine. So I think you're right. So why is Maine so great at this?
Well, I think, you know, I'm from a smaller community.
You're from southern Maine, I could tell.
Yeah, very southern, called Georgia. And I just think there is a real connection to neighbors. I mean, I think you don't have as many resources available to you, so you really do look to your neighbor and to others in your community. You look to whatever is institutionalized in your community, whether that's a faith community, whether it's a social club, whatever that is, you look to your network of resources that you can pull from, and they're not as many in rural communities. So I think that's one of the reasons. We're also seeing a trend in people finding jobs or being connected to jobs and opportunities in education through volunteerism. So I've been surveying volunteer managers and volunteers and people who are working mainly in social service agencies and organizations and in teachers and others, and asking them how they found their job or how they got the job. And many times they're telling me, I was volunteering at this school and got a job. I was volunteering in a healthcare facility and I had a nursing certificate and got a job. I was volunteering at a daycare center and got a job. I was volunteering at a park. So after hearing this trend, we came up with something called JOBS, jobs, jump on board with service. So the idea is to ask people who are unemployed or underemployed to volunteer by day and look for jobs on the internet by night. And what that means is I'm asking volunteer managers and nonprofits to reach out to those people who are unemployed in Maine, veterans who are returning from the war, who are not employed, and saying, come into our operation, our nonprofit, volunteer with us, but I'm going to treat you almost like an intern. I'm going to ask you, what can I do in exchange for your time and talents to help you gain some skills? Do you need computer support? Do you need to learn certain type of skill? Do you want to be networked into the business community more? Can I include you in some of my business meetings, our board meetings, social occasions? Anything that will get you out in the community, meeting new people, exposing you and your skills to others, that gets you out of the home into the community, because when you're at home, you're not meeting new people, you reduce the chance of your networking, which reduces, I think, the chance of you being able to secure a job.
That's a really good point. I think that's a really good point, because all of the work that I'm doing at the Maine Community Foundation tells me that people need training beyond high school. And it strikes me that there is a mismatch here between the jobs that are available and the skill set of the people who are unemployed. But inviting some of those people to come in as volunteers or service learners, where there's a mentoring component, is training beyond high school. It's filling that need. That's awesome. And it's very different. You know, back 100 years ago, I was a VISTA volunteer in Santa Fe. Not a bad assignment. But the program was very different than it sounds like it is today, and how you're thinking about volunteerism and service learning. So talk a little bit about your vision for what you would like to see or are planning to do with the work that you're doing.
Well, with AmeriCorps and VISTA and Senior Corps programs like RSVP, Senior Companions, and Foster Grandparents, we are really trying to find creative ways to grow national service, you know, with creative partnerships. And I think the only way we're going to be successful is to talk to new funders, talk to new foundations that have not worked with us, talk to corporations and businesses who are interested in partnering with local nonprofits that will help provide the match and funding to stretch our federal dollars even further. There's only so many federal dollars to go. We are a federal agency, but we actually thrive best when we are partnered with local funders or regional funders. So that's one way, is so we can, for example, extended day learning. Having an AmeriCorps program, the members are going to coordinate the after-school learning activities, bring in what we call citizen teachers, so that we can have service learning type of activities after school, in an after-school setting, so that they are learning about science or learning around reading or math. And so we can bring in volunteers from the community to be our citizen teachers. The AmeriCorps members can also be teachers, but they can be coordinating the activities. The students are extending their learning day well into the afternoon. Parents like that because they're in a safe place. So we've just got to, I think we've got to sort of reset what our community's needs are. I mean, we've got to really focus on our graduations for our young people. We have to focus on our veterans to make sure that they are receive the care they need and deserve after coming home from the war and protecting us. And I think it's our responsibility to reach out to our veterans. Make sure that our seniors who are frail and alone are not left alone, that we're making sure that they have all the fundamental basics they need, and if they are able, bring them in so they can volunteer. We talk about health benefits to volunteerism. We know that volunteerism, actually, as you're aging, if you volunteer, you live longer, you have less stress, you have less sense of isolation. It even kicks in endorphins when you volunteer, so you're happier. So there's lots of benefits to volunteerism, and I think we just need to spread the good cheer around.
So say I'm listening to you talk about the link between volunteerism and recovering from the recession more quickly as a community. So say I'm a city manager, or I'm a mayor, or a city councilor. What should I know? What should I know? Because I'm concerned about my unemployment rates. I'm concerned maybe about local crime. How can I work with people here in Maine, or how can I integrate thinking about volunteerism in the work that I'm doing?
There's an exciting movement going on around the country called Cities of Service.
Oh.
And I like this movement. And the idea is there's about 100 cities that have signed on to this idea, that mayors take the lead role in being the big champion in their community for volunteer engagement. And what they do is, the Cities of Service movement asks mayors to integrate service into their blueprint of their plans for the year. So when they're developing their budget for housing and for parks and for working with their school districts, that they actually incorporate a component of citizen engagement into the budget. Mayors are strapped financially these days. Many of their budgets have been cut drastically. So they've got to be creative in how can they continue to provide important city services with less resources. Well, one way is to invite citizens to participate. Have volunteer readers in your libraries. Have volunteers help with safety patrol in your communities. Volunteers serving with your local police and sheriff organizations. There's so many ways that volunteers can help with providing services that are needed in communities. So if that mayor takes it serious that this research that shows a more connected community will rebound from a recession quicker, then they will say, I'm going to make this a priority in my community. So I think that's the message to mayors, is embrace service, embrace volunteerism, think about AmeriCorps and RSVP and senior corps programs, and how can you integrate that into your work? Can
volunteers be of any age? I mean, as I think about volunteerism, I think about the RSVP program, seniors who are no longer in the workforce, but I'm guessing that might not be, it might be sort of a typical volunteer, but I'm guessing there are other age groups that get involved for different reasons.
There are, but I'll tell you, I learned about a 100-year-old from your First Lady. Ms. LePage told me that she honored a 100-year-old Mainer recently for still serving in a hospital.
Really?
Lucid, serving, working on a regular basis. I mean, that's a pretty good testament into to the expansion of age it could be. One of the fastest growing age group trends is our teenagers. And I love seeing the fact that teenagers are embracing service. One way they can do this is through service learning projects, where they are learning and helping with a community problem or solution, or being exposed to an issue that they wouldn't normally be exposed to by working on, or history, learning about the history of Maine. You know, the tribal communities, the Native American history here through service learning projects. But the reason I like teens serving and volunteering, and I think we as adults should embrace this, is that will grow a culture of service. Because when teens get exposed to service and volunteerism, they like it. They like the social aspect, they like doing good, they like participating in change, and they will continue to do that as they grow older and become great citizen participants as adults.
And they're learning. I mean, they're learning in a way that perhaps they're not learning in a typical classroom, picking up knowledge and skills and attitudes that are really lifelong in terms of their ability to contribute over the long term. So, in 3 sentences, what counsel would you give us in the state of Maine to be a national exemplar in terms of having the best volunteers doing the best work? What counsel would you give us?
Well, one is Maine's doing it right now. So you've got a lot of citizen engagement going on, a lot of connectivity with communities. Stay on that path. Encourage Maine to be very intergenerational in this service, having seniors work with teens and college students and those in between. And so I think intergenerational service really has a lot of benefits to it. I mean, you learn from your elders, you learn from young people. And so I hope that Maine will continue to do that. I want to encourage Mainers to continue to really focus on the veterans and the rural communities. They are in need, and they sometimes feel isolated. And we need to be very creative and purposeful in how we reach out into our neighbors in the West who are in these rural communities that need help, and our veterans who are returning on a daily basis here, reaching out to them and saying, I really, really do want to return our thanks to you for serving our country, and how can I do that? So looking at the greatest need, that's what we need to focus on, is taking the assets, the resources, and turning them very purposely into where you have need, whether it's seniors, veterans, our children, rural communities. But I sure like what I see here. I think this is a wonderful community. We've seen this, I love this from away concept that I've been hearing about. And we have these AmeriCorps members who are coming from other states, far away, and they're serving a year or two in Maine, and they're staying here.
Oh, that's great.
They're staying here. I asked a large group of them to raise their hands, how many are from another state, and almost all of them raised their hands. And then I asked, will you consider staying in Maine after your service ends? And almost everyone raised their hand and said yes. So that's another way to recruit new citizens, is to encourage AmeriCorps programs in Maine.
You're right. And you mentioned assets, harnessing all of our assets at the Community Foundation. That's how we approach all of our work. And we think of assets not just money, but the people are our assets, and they bring different skills and knowledge to the table, and harnessing those people, and as you say, inviting them to partner and give back is really what it's all about.
That's right.
So thank you for being here,
Meredith.
and we look forward to your return soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Meredith.